Hey everybody, I'm Peter Wilkins. Great to meet you. Thank you for coming out to hear all these wonderful speakers speak, and thank you to Yelp and the organizers for putting this together. So I'm the founder of Emergent VR. We're a VR platform and content distribution company. We've been in business since January 2015. So I'm here to talk about the future of virtual reality and how it relates to the travel industry. Before I get into that, a little bit about myself so you can rest assured that your time with us today is well spent. So my background's actually in the entertainment industry. So I worked on a few video games like Toy Story 3 and BioShock Infinite. I also worked in the film industry at DreamWorks Animation on a few Academy Award nominated films like How to Train Your Dragon and Kung Fu Panda. I also created the first movie for VR, 0 Point. So this was created for the Oculus Rift and came out on Steam October 2014 and was also featured in Sundance January 2015. So what is this virtual reality thing? So a little bit of history. This is Ivan Sutherland at MIT in 1968. He's looking into what became known as the Sword of Damocles. This is the first virtual reality head-mounted display, or HMD, that we know about. This thing was so heavy, they had to suspend it from the ceiling. But when you looked inside, you saw a 3D cube. Sounds basic, but it was cutting-edge research at the time. So VR would stay in academia and military applications for the rest of the 20th century until the mid-90s. So the mid-90s was the first wave of consumer VR. This was the first time that people actually tried to release this to the public. So these were called the virtual eyeglasses. They were on sale for, I believe, $500 at the time, and they promised a fully immersive virtual gaming experience. So I was lucky enough to get these for Christmas. My dad and I were both super excited to try this out. So we hooked it up to the computer, we played a couple games, and unfortunately it just didn't work. So the head tracking would get disoriented very quickly. The resolution and the frame rate was too low. The hardware just wasn't ready. So the rest of the world seemed to agree. These and all the other VR products in the mid-90s failed and went back to the drawing board. So they would stay in academia again and the military until 2012, when a USC student named Palmer Luckey, I believe he was a journalism student, created a company called Oculus, and he launched a Kickstarter for something he called the Rift. He promised that the Rift would let you step into the game, and he was seeking $250,000. By the end of the Kickstarter, he'd raised over $2.5 million. This demonstrated that demand for consumer VR was still very strong. 12 months later, they'd raised over $75 million and made a few high-profile hires, such as John Carmack, ID Software, Wolfenstein 3D fame, as Oculus CTO. 6 months after that, or 18 months from the founding of Oculus, the world changed forever, with Facebook's $2 billion acquisition of Oculus. This was a huge surprise for everybody, and it was the signal to the investment community and the world that VR was ready for prime time. Since then, we've seen a great deal of entertainment and electronics manufacturing companies enter the VR arms race. So we have Sony and the PlayStation 4. They've announced PSVR, which comes out this fall. HTC, in partnership with Valve, has created the Vive. They're on the bottom right. So the Vive allows full positional tracking in a 12-foot by 12-foot volume. HMDs up to this point would track which direction you looked, but they didn't track where you actually stood or how you moved. The Vive lets you explore a 12-foot by 12-foot space in the virtual world. Samsung, in partnership with Oculus, has created the Gear VR. The Gear VR takes supported Android smartphones as the display. So if you already have a phone that supports VR, it's only $99 to buy the headset. This is widely anticipated to be the primary way that VR goes mainstream this year. They are giving these things out like hotcakes, by the way. If you upgrade to one of these supported phones, you get the headset for free. So they've shipped more than 1 million. So how does VR work? What makes it so special? So the key effect of virtual reality has come to be known as presence, the feeling that you're actually there. So somewhat counterintuitively, presence isn't created by high-resolution graphics or photorealistic virtual environments. It's actually created by a combination of 3 things. High frame rate rendering, so you don't perceive a flickering of the display. low latency head tracking. So when I turn my head, the virtual world I'm viewing rotates just like it would in the real world without any lag. And then finally, low pixel persistence displays. Pixel persistence is the time it takes for a pixel on a display to turn off and on. So if that's not close to 0, you'll see a smear when you turn your head. So low pixel persistence displays were critical for virtual reality. So combine all 3 of these with a wide field of view, and you get presence. So presence is when your subconscious or your lizard brain is fooled into thinking that the virtual world is real. Even if the graphics are very, very simple and basic, if you have those other qualities we just discussed, presence will happen. And interesting things happen when you achieve presence. Some people believe that your brain forms real memories of the virtual experience. Your body has a real physiological reaction to the virtual simulation. I remember the first time I felt true presence. It was at Oculus in 2014 when they were still in Irvine. At that point in time, head-mounted displays tracked the direction you looked, but again, they didn't track your position. So I went into a special room at Oculus where they had the first positional tracking demo, put on the system, found myself standing on a platform over what looked to be a 30-foot drop. I tried to walk off the platform, but when I got to the edge, my body wouldn't let me. My legs froze up, my heart rate increased, I started to perspire. Even though consciously I knew this was an illusion and I was safe, subconsciously I was convinced that I was in danger. That's presence. So now that we understand a little bit about the history of VR and how it works through presence, how does that relate to the travel industry? So we can talk about 3 different ways that VR is going to impact the travel industry. Planning your trip, getting there, and then finally capturing and sharing the experience with other people. So planning the trip. If you're planning a vacation or travel to someplace you've never been before, it's difficult. There are so many options and there's so many ways to actually get information about where to go. I just went through this myself, trying to plan a trip to Southeast Asia for a conference that I'm going to. So many ways to decide which airline to take, where to stay, what should I do while I'm there. So there's lots of resources and lots of companies have tried to solve this problem. You could read reviews on TripAdvisor from other people that have been there. That's useful. It's great to hear first-person accounts of what it's like to be there, but everybody's different. Everybody has different tastes. What somebody else thinks is great, I might not personally like. Same goes for Yelp. You could Google image search images of a place. You might be able to find beautiful pictures of some locations, but other locations might not have a good photographer that captured that place. So it's kind of hit or miss. Same goes for videos on YouTube. You could even talk to somebody else and get their opinion if they've been there themselves, but that suffers from the same problem as TripAdvisor and Yelp and everything else. So how can we solve this? The solution with virtual reality is to actually be there and experience what it's like using VR. So using virtual reality, I can put on a headset and I can experience a video of this place and feel like I'm actually there taking in the surroundings. I can see what it's like to be in the lobby of the hotel. I can walk around and virtually explore the hotel rooms and compare them against other ones before I book one. So VR makes it possible to feel like you're actually there exploring a location before you make a decision. Now, most of these experiences, when we're talking about live action VR, have been pre-recorded through new types of camera systems that we'll go into in a minute. But very quickly, startups and large companies are working on live streaming. So soon you'll be able to, in real time, be in another location, looking around from one of these 360 cameras that people are creating. And that'll give you even more accurate of a sense of what a certain place is like right now. So I think we can all relate to this guy in the middle. I think we've all been him at some point in time. So once we've decided on a location, and now we're traveling to get there, we have to deal with this. Especially if it's a long-duration international flight. Quite often, coach class is cramped, crowded. It's a little claustrophobic. There's limited activities. So VR can really help with this as well. So with VR, you can watch movies like you're in your own private theater. You can play games, even with other people if there's a Wi-Fi connection. And you can experience being at a beach or in a forest or some expansive location that helps relieve that feeling of claustrophobia. In fact, Qantas Airlines has started experimenting with giving Gear VR headsets to their first-class passengers on A380 flights. So we get there, we survive, thanks to VR. Now you want to capture the experience and you want to share it with other people. So you still have all your traditional options, but VR actually adds a whole new set of ways to capture reality and share it with other people. So you can actually capture an experience and share it with somebody else, and they can experience what it's like to be there, as if they were there with you. So what does it take to create this new type of immersive content for these headsets? We do have to create new capture hardware and new software to make this possible. So currently, the most popular forms of live action content for virtual reality are known as 360 photos and 360 videos. So there's essentially three types. 360 photos, which is exactly what it sounds, a photo that surrounds you in all directions. 360 video, which is a video in all directions. And then 3D 360, which is the same as the 360 video, but you get a sense of depth when something is close to the camera. You feel like it's real and actually in front of you. So let's take a look at each one. So this is a 360 photo. These have actually been around for a really long time now in the form of panoramas. Chances are your smartphone right now can take a panorama, and if you were to take a full 360, that could be considered a 360 photo. There have been apps like Microsoft PhotoSynth, Google Photosphere. These have been around for more than 5 years at least, that enable anyone to create these sort of photospheres. The problem with panoramic photography is that it hasn't caught on because there's no good viewing method. Swiping around on your phone or looking at it stretched on a screen just isn't a great experience. Things are small, they're a little distorted. But you could think of 360 photos as the native photography format for virtual reality. Now that we have VR headsets, we can actually view this content in its native format. So you are surrounded by the photo and get a real sense of what it's like to be there. You could think of 360 photos and videos as a form of teleportation that lets you actually teleport to this location at that specific place and moment in time. So 360 video, very popular. Close to 80% of the content on Gear VR right now is actually video, not games. So it's still very difficult for most people to create. These are camera arrays from real companies that have tried to create 360 video. The one on the right with the GoPros is similar to the array that we built to create Zero Point. So obviously this takes some technical expertise, and it's not cheap. You have to take some cameras, typically GoPros, but it could be DSLRs or any camera, arrange them in a circular or cylindrical array, and then you capture video in all directions simultaneously. You then have to take that video, post-process it, and stitch it together, and then the output is a spherical video that you can view from any direction. It's a very compelling format. It feels like you're actually inside the video or inside the movie, but it's very difficult to create for consumers. That being said, this is a huge opportunity for travel and travel-related businesses. The companies that embrace these new media types and find ways to integrate this with their business are going to have huge advantages over the companies that wait to embrace VR. So a less common but very interesting type of live action content for VR is known as photogrammetry. So Wikipedia defines photogrammetry as the science of measuring distances using photographs. You can also measure these distances using infrared or lasers. Typically take specialized equipment, or at the very least, a DSLR and hundreds of photos. But the end result is you're able to go from photos to a 3D reconstruction of the environment. So this could be great for, say, capturing hotel rooms for a hospitality business, and then letting people walk around inside these hotel rooms in VR. This is even harder to create. We're a long way from consumers to be able to create this, and it doesn't work well for motion. So if you have anything that's animating, like a person, this isn't going to work. There are some startups like 8i, based in New Zealand, that are working on solutions for video. They put an actor in a green screen stage, surround him with a sphere or a ring of cameras, and then they image him doing some performance. And then the 3D reconstruction of the actor is essentially a new type of video, a 3D video, that you can view from any distance and walk around it. It's really, really cool, but it's going to be a long time before that becomes mainstream. But right now, today, there's an opportunity to either start a company or to add a line of business to your existing company to start imaging real spaces and environments in the world and creating virtual experiences like this for VR. A few startups have already begun doing this for real estate. There's two startups, Matterport and GeoCV. They're both in the business of scanning high-end real estate and then creating a virtual tour that allows you to then walk around in each room and view it like you were there from the comfort of your home. So that's pretty nice. I've yet to see a company do this for travel. So this is a really huge opportunity. So after you've captured your live action content through one of these 4 methods, how do you distribute this to people? So this is actually probably the best solved component of everything. Creating it's still hard, sharing it, not so much. So YouTube supported 360 video since 2015. Facebook currently supports 360 video. You've probably seen it show up on your news feed. You can move your phone around and look around inside the video. Pretty cool. They've also announced support for 360 photos soon. And then there's a variety of startups that provide 360 video distribution. Viridio and Little Star both allow you to share 360 video. Emergent, my company, does all 3, plus photogrammetry. So distribution is essentially solved. You can embed the YouTube 360 player on your existing website, so that makes it very accessible for existing customers. Or you can opt to build a custom app for one of these mobile VR devices. So in summary, VR is here today, and it's changing everything. So right now is a tremendous opportunity across so many verticals. VR was originally designed for gaming, but it's already seen so many non-entertainment applications. As our first speaker mentioned today, it's already being used in psychology clinics to treat phobias by exposing people to their worst nightmares in VR in a controlled way. It's being used in hospitals as pain relief for people that can't take painkillers. Journalism is also embracing this. A startup called Emblematic Group has been recreating world events in virtual reality for people to experience. And you may have recently read that the Huffington Post acquired Riot for their 360 video expertise. It's also poised to radically disrupt and transform the travel industry. Some of the applications I listed are just the beginning. There's no doubt that there's going to be ways that we haven't thought of yet that VR is going to affect travel. So I just want to emphasize one last time. This year is a huge opportunity for everyone in this room, whether it's your existing travel-related business or a new one you're considering starting. Now is the time to find ways to integrate VR into your business or to create a new business around one of these new business models. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Happy to help. Otherwise, thank you very much for listening.
And we're going to open up the floor for questions.
So I did see at a VR startup meetup a camera that can take at least still VR pictures. I guess probably just 360. It was for like $100. It seemed like a great thing for cruise ships and so forth. So even though the video is quite far away, do you think that the still VR stuff from user-generated content is here now and can be used?
I would say so, yeah. The most popular panoramic camera out there right now is the Ricoh Theta S. So it has 2 fisheye lenses, allows you to take 360 photos and videos. So that's, I think, $350. So if you're willing to spend a little bit of money, you can start taking 360 photos and videos today. The photos look pretty good that come out of it. Video, not so much. So I'd give 360 video in the palm of your hand maybe another year. But it is definitely here today. Another promising camera that not a lot of people have gotten to see yet, myself included, is the Samsung Gear 360. So it's their 360 camera that's designed specifically for the Gear VR. So you can do photos, videos, and it can even live stream to VR headsets. So that's also going to be a similar price point, I believe, around $350 or $400. So that stuff is available today. So it's a great way to start. If you want to do higher resolution video or you want to do 3D video, that still requires custom solutions or more expensive solutions. So there's so-called prosumer cameras that you can buy for $7,000 that do 3D 360, and they go all the way up to professional filmmaking cameras like the Nokia Ozo, which is $60,000. So there's a variety of solutions, and for 3D, it's going to be another couple years till you can buy it at Best Buy. But yes, it's here today.
Are you familiar with Uvisit? Philadelphia, I mean, I guess New York, because they're doing a lot of college stuff and hospitality stuff in terms of moving into VR. They've done a lot of 360, but there's a few companies looking at the college tour space and the college tour space and doing videos, 360 and virtual reality in that space. I was curious, you said not a lot in hospitality, and I know that they've posted a bunch of stuff in the hospitality side and the real estate side.
Yeah, Uvisit's been around for a little bit now. I forget how many they have, but they create 360 photo tours of college campuses. So I think they're using traditional methods like a DSLR that is stitched together in post-process. So while their workflow may not be consumer-friendly, as far as I know, the end result is pretty cool. So you can essentially pick a campus that they've shot in 360, and then they'll have shot different areas on the campus, and you can go there in VR, look at it, get a feel for what it looks like. So yeah, they've already started. I didn't know they'd moved into hospitality, though.
They've covered about 4 or 5 different. They're covering about 4 or 5 different verticals. I've met with one of their competitors in terms of the college campuses, who's moving into VR, the University TV, who's done, again, 360 and done the colleges. But the thing that I hear from that space, my wife and I run a startup and we do unescorted tours, is that it seems that the colleges or these organizations aren't necessarily paying them for going, for the IP. So they're owning the IP, but the organizations may be paying them for travel expenses to get there and the post-production information. Again, any familiarity with that?
Yeah, it's tricky right now. There's not a lot of revenue in the space in general because it's so new and not a lot of consumers have headsets. So most of the revenue that is being made right now is typically working with larger brands and companies to do either an experiment or some sort of marketing or advertising video in VR. So you see lots of little tests and lots of little demos. You may have seen on Facebook 360 that National Geographic is releasing a lot of 360 videos. So if you are very, very intent on making revenue at this early stage in VR, that's most likely the way you have to go, is approaching these larger companies and doing projects for them on a contract basis. That being said, I also haven't heard of many colleges that are willing to spend money on advertising in VR quite yet. But I imagine that's going to change pretty quickly.
We have a question in the back here.
Okay. Hi. Question is pretty broad. So when originally VR started actively growing, maybe about 10 years ago, there were a lot of speculations where we would be in 10 years, right? A lot of things changed. Things went not like it was expected. And now everybody talking more conservative and what we will see in another 1, 2, maybe 3 years, right? That's what pretty much you were covering. But I'm wondering, what is your thoughts about where we would be in 10, 15 years with the VR, especially in relation to travel? What do you think about that?
Sure. So I think there's 2 things that are going to drastically change in the next 5 to 10 years. I think one is 360 video is probably going to not last for a very long time. I think that's going to be temporary. The limitation of 360 video is whatever position it's captured in, you're kind of stuck there. You can't really move around. It's not interactive. So I think 5 years from now, photogrammetry is going to be much more mainstream. A lot of the live action content that's going to be created for VR is going to be in full 3D. So you will be able to move around inside it and interact with it. I'd say 5 years from now, you'll probably be able to put on your headset, go to your favorite sporting event, and choose your position on the field in real time and be able to see the game unfolding all around you. That'll be really cool. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. So I think that's going to be one of the bigger changes in terms of live action VR. Looking past that, so augmented reality, obviously closely related. So whereas VR is all about putting you inside the digital world, AR is about bringing the virtual world or the digital world into reality in a realistic way. So AR was always considered a harder problem technically, and it's many more years off. But a lot of the solutions for AR build on the problems we've had to solve for VR. And so I feel like consumer AR, the first generation, will be here in 2 to 3 years. Microsoft HoloLens. Microsoft just started shipping the HoloLens developer kits to people. We actually got a couple at our office, and it's really, really compelling. It works great. So there's advantages to both. I think most people anticipate that VR is going to be more of a consumer and entertainment device, whereas AR could be more of an enterprise and more of a productivity device. So I think both are equally important. I would say 10 years from now, AR and VR is going to be the same device. It's going to be the same form factor as a pair of sunglasses. You'll be able to put them on, fully immersed in the virtual world if you need to, or have it also display augmented stuff over the real world. So 10 years from now, I think those are going to be pretty common. I think that'll be the next platform after mobile, will be an AR, VR device. And the implications for that, that's something that's almost best left to science fiction. The possibilities are really, really boundless as to what you can do with it. Just playing with HoloLens and augmented reality, they have a very simple app called Holograms, where you place 3D models in your world, and the device remembers where you place these things. So it has a bunch of cartoony stuff like, a T-Rex head, a cat, a tiger. So I placed all these things on my deck during the day, took off the headset, forgot about it. And then later that night, I put the headset back on. I forgot where I'd placed these things. And I looked outside, and in the darkness, in my deck, was this giant glowing cat head looking at me. And it startled me. I was like, what? What is that? So it's going to be interesting. Like, once we start mixing the digital world with the real world seamlessly, who knows where that's going to go, but it's going to be cool.
You mentioned a number of companies about virtual reality. Are there any emerging standards? Because all those companies compete with each other, and we're not looking for a VHS or Betamax type scenario or Android or iPhone. Are there emerging standards that people can develop to?
It's a good question. So the short answer is not really. There's a couple attempts. So people have been working on trying to get WebVR standardized. So there's a team at Mozilla working on WebVR. There's also a team at Chromium at Google. So obviously to make VR work across all web browsers is going to require some standards. So that is in progress. In terms of video, it's really been the Wild West. But people are kind of converging on similar codecs, similar format, and similar projection for the data. So it's becoming more standard. But in terms of actual standards, I would say not really. We still haven't even had the opportunity to do long-term studies on what the health impacts are of using these headsets for years would be. So there's obviously lots of controversy around that. Just to play it safe, Oculus and Valve and these guys, they have a warning when you fire it up that says, don't let people under the age of 13 use it because of the fear of it impacting developing vision. But again, there's no studies that show that it adversely impacts it one way or another. So yeah, all that is still very much so in flux.
Thank you for sharing insights. I wonder, how do you think travel and entertainment will come together, and with the help of VR, where that would go, and what are the challenges that entrepreneurs or companies face if they want to go into those areas? Thanks.
Sure. So travel and entertainment. So I think one thing that's going to be really, really popular is exploring the world virtually. So people are going to be capturing experiences in different places in the world. My company, Emergent, that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to build a user-generated content platform so people can capture their perspective somewhere in the world for virtual reality and share that with everyone else. So the goal there is to be able to enter this virtual world and just explore the entire world and see individual perspectives from everywhere. So I think that'll be interesting. It definitely relates to travel in the sense that you're checking out new places in the world you might not go physically. And it may even inform your travel decisions. If you have a really cool experience somewhere virtually, you may decide you want to visit it in the real life. So that could be an option. In terms of companies getting involved with this, there are a lot of startups, especially here in the Bay Area, that have been working on this for a couple of years now. So there is already a lot of expertise. A lot of these companies are, actively trying to find contract work with larger companies. So there's definitely a lot of, not a lot, but there are some resources you could leverage if you are interested in trying to find ways to work with VR for your existing travel company.
Hi, Hi, Peter. I'm Brittany. I'm with the Expedia group of brands. And my question for you is, as we're here in a room talking about how excited we all are about VR, what are you hearing from the naysayers outside of groups like this?
It's a good question. So I've given probably over 1,000 VR demos by now. And out of all the demos I've given, I've only had 2 people react negatively to it. And they were really strange reactions too. I'm not really sure where it came from. But compared to previous technologies I've worked in, developing mobile apps or video games, where there's quite a lot of cynicism and people that aren't fans, people seem to overwhelmingly love VR. And I think part of that is because it's been in our culture, in our movies, in our fiction, for so long. It's kind of like, flying cars from Back to the Future or hoverboards or whatever. It's something that we all love, that Hollywood's trained us to love, and we want it. And so even if nobody's seen it before, when they see the headset on your face, they suspect, is that virtual reality? Of course, they ask to try it, and then most of the time they like it. So I think in general, people do like it and appreciate it and are excited about it. But of course, there's always the cynics who are worried that it's somehow more isolating. I know that's a big concern amongst people. That it may be antisocial, it may cut people off from the real world, which is ironic because one of the big pushes right now in the VR industry is for social VR. So it's not clear what the killer apps for VR are going to be yet. There's not really something that's come out that's been like, this is why you get VR. We're still kind of in the demo phase. But myself included, and lots of other people suspect that social is going to be one of the killer apps for VR. Being able to engage in content with other people that aren't physically present. I think we'll always have critics and naysayers for this particular technology, but I think the benefits really outweigh the risks at this point in time.
Peter, if I'm having a VR shopping experience of a cruise ship or a resort, will I hear the audio environment around me?
So yes. You definitely can. So audio is a huge component of the experience. So people have been also innovating in the audio capture along with video capture. So the most popular thing I've seen right now is binaural audio. You may have seen those microphones before. They look like human ears. So the way computers try to model audio to sound realistic for humans is called HRTF, head-related transfer function. And it's basically trying to model the way the ear captures sound. And without a really accurate HRTF, it's hard to tell what direction sound is coming from. So a lot of spatial audio is just trying to simulate that. Right now, you can't really accurately recreate an HRTF for somebody without a lengthy calibration because everybody's ear is different. So that's an active area of research. There have been spatial audio mics that look like human ears, and there's 6 of them on a cube that claim to capture spatial audio better than just a regular microphone would. But audio is really important for a good VR experience. If you have a good pair of headphones, you're able to tell where sounds are coming from, which is essential in a 360 environment, so you don't get lost and you know where to look at the appropriate time. A related problem is directing people's attention in virtual reality. If you have all this space to look at, how do you know where to look and when? So people are trying to figure out how to direct people's attention. This is kind of the big challenge in Hollywood right now. It's like a new cinematic language. So nobody's quite figured it out yet. But in terms of directing attention, most people are looking to really good spatial audio to make that happen.
I think I have the mic. So I love VR and I love travel, and I was at Google I/O this week, and a lot of the talk with the Project Tango, all of that was fascinating. Mm-hmm. I was wondering what you think about whether VR, as it gets better and more accessible to everybody, will that cut into actual travel? Because you used an interesting word in your talk, which was teleportation. So if I could teleport myself to the top of the Eiffel Tower and see what it's like and feel like I was there, would I want to stand in line for 4 hours to get to the top of that myself?
It's a really good question. You know what? I actually hadn't considered that, but I think you might be right. I think it could actually be a threat to physical travel. Michael Abrash, he's the chief scientist at Oculus. He describes VR as trying to drive the senses of sight and sound. And he sees, a very long road until it's indistinguishable from reality. But presumably, we'll get pretty close very quickly. And at that point, you may actually be able to get the same visual and the same audio cues as if you were actually there in person. However, I don't think they're working as hard for scent, touch, or taste, for which I'm grateful. If you still want to smell the Eiffel Tower and touch it, that has a long way to go virtually.
I think that's it. Thank you very much.
All right, let's have a round of applause for Mr. Wilkins. Thank you, Wilk.